Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. My name's Amanda. This is mostly a blog of my late autism and ADHD diagnosis. But every once in a while, I like to kind of just put an information video out there. And so today I really want to talk about some myths versus facts about autism. And since my diagnosis, which is a little bit over a year ago, I have deep dived into the whole realm of autism and have learned so much. I'm not an expert, but this is just from my own research and lived experience. One of the biggest myths, I think, around autism is that autistic people are loners, that they don't want to have friends, that they are all introverts, and they prefer to isolate themselves. This is just unequivocally a myth. Just like anyone across the population, an autistic person could be an introvert or could be an extrovert. Even many years before my diagnosis, I would sometimes wonder if I was autistic because I would relate to some of the things I heard about autism even before I knew that much. But because I always considered myself an extrovert, I thought, just like other people, I believed the myth. And so I didn't think I could be autistic. But you can very much be an extrovert and autistic. Autism in the DSM-5 has social difficulties. I stuttered on that because I have been personally reframing that as social differences instead of difficulties. But I think the wording in the DSM-5 is that we have social difficulties. And that is true. Even though I'm an extrovert, I have always struggled to socialize in a neurotypical society where the mass majority of the people around me are neurotypical. I'm going to have trouble with communication because the communication style between an autistic and an allistic, which is a non-autistic person, is very different. I've had videos up on the channel about how we are bottom-up thinkers, where an allistic is a top-down thinker, and we also share stories differently. Autistic people, we share by a relatable story, like we tell a little bit and then we'll share a relatable story and we'll go back and forth, where an allistic person sees that as recentering the conversation and that it's not your turn to share. You're only there to listen and ask questions. And that's just a very different conversation style. And so these are things that we will struggle with. We also struggle with innuendo, sarcasm. So all of these things make it hard for us to socialize in a large neurotypical society majority, but it doesn't mean that we don't want to or we don't try. And when you get a group of autistic people together, often we will connect on a level just like, two neurotypical people connecting with their brain types. Another common myth is that all autistic people don't make eye contact. And I think it is pretty common for autistic people to avoid eye contact, but eye contact is a skill that is very easily learned from a young age because you'll hear parents say, look at me in the eye. And so before my diagnosis, I always thought I did well with eye contact. I did not realize this was something that I struggled with. But I did. I just never really spent much time thinking about it. I mostly watch people's mouths, but I would explain that away by saying that it helped me hear, because another common trait of autism is auditory processing disorder. And when I watch someone's lips, it does actually subconsciously somehow help me hear them. So even though I wouldn't be watching people's eyes or when I'm talking to them, I would look at their lips, or like sometimes I would like look at their forehead. I actually did not have very great eye contact, but I was able to mask it to such a degree that most people didn't comment on it. Now that I'm unmasking, I realize how much easier it is for me to talk if I'm looking not at the person. I can't explain it very well to people who are not autistic, but it's just like my brain can flow better if I'm not also trying to look at a face and try to read the expressions on a person's face. Because if I'm talking to you and then I'm looking at your face and trying to analyze, does that quirk of an eyebrow mean something, then it's harder for me to communicate. So, like, not looking at the eyes helps me. And also, when someone's talking to me, not looking at them helps me listen. Another common myth of autism is that autistic people all have learning disabilities. And this, again, is something that is not true. Autism is separate from a learning disability diagnosis. There are autistic people, somewhere like sometimes as much as 30 to 40%, depending on which studies you read, where there's a comorbidity with a learning disability. So that means that they might have autism and dyslexia, or autism and an intellectual disability, autism and dyscalculia. But autism is separate from the learning disabled diagnosis. And then on the flip side, savantism is another myth. People will either think that autistic people have severe learning disabilities, or they'll think that an autistic person has savantism, which means that they excel at a very high level in one area. You'll hear about savant pianists who maybe have never taken piano lesson. They can sit down at a piano and hear notes and like just play um, after hearing the song once, or mathematicians who are savants. That is, again, something that's kind of hard to track, but is only in about 10%, and the numbers are all changing because there's so much current research being done on autism. But again, it's kind of a separate thing from autism. And there's actually a pretty high number of autistic people who have higher IQs. Now, again, IQ is not necessarily a great test. A lot of people say that it is biased and outdated. So I'm not going to speak to that. I know part of my evaluation was to get an IQ test, and my IQ test was significantly above average. And that is common for autistic people, but I don't know how much validity is in that if the IQ tests they're kind of starting to find out aren't super valid. So I don't know. I'm just reporting like my personal experience from my evaluation. Another common myth of autism is that only children can be autistic and then you can outgrow it. No, autism is in our brain. It is how our brains are developed. There's an autistic gene. Most autism is genetic. And a lot of people are going to be like, what? You can be autistic without it being present in your family. That is pretty rare. And also, again, there's so much masking with autism that it might have been there and just nobody saw it. And it could also have like maybe skipped a generation. Several decades ago, it was much easier to be like an autistic person in society because there wasn't so much overwhelming stimulus coming at you. People would get a job and hold the same job for 45 years and have a routine that they were able to maintain. There was just less, it would be the, grandma who sits there and likes to knit and, because that's a STEM, and she wants her oatmeal every morning and has a routine of her day. Or it's the older gentleman who had his very set routine. He came home from work, he did this, this, and this, and then it was time for bed. There's a lot, if you are autistic and you look back at your grandparents, you might see autistic traits in them, and parents too. But no, it is not just in children. You are born with an autistic brain. It's how the neural pathways, were formed in our brain, and you're autistic your entire life. Your brain's not going to just suddenly, I mean, yes, your brain can change. Like there's like plasticity that you hear about, but again, that's still your structure of your brain is allistic or autistic. And again, I am not a brain scientist. This is just my trying to explain it from how I've learned it. And the last thing I would like to encourage people is to say the word autism. Um, this one is just a personal plea from myself as a disability advocate. Too many people are afraid of the word autism yet, and when we tiptoe around a word, that means that we are still holding some kind of shame or uncomfortableness around it. And there's nothing wrong with being autistic. So saying the word is great. Like, you know, having euphemisms around it, like, oh, they're on the spectrum, makes it really sound like you are ashamed that that person that you're referring to is autistic. Now, if the person you're talking about hasn't fully embraced their autism, yeah, respect their journey into it, because autism still is highly stigmatized, which is something that I'm working on to destigmatize. But, you know, as an autistic person, I am autistic. I don't say I am a person with autism. Autism is not something I can set down like with like my little bag of autism. I can't take it, leave it. I actually am 100% autistic and always will be. And so I say I am autistic. I'm an autist. That's a noun form of autism, and in English anyway. And yeah, just get used to saying the word. Say it, autistic, autistic, autistic. And then you can kind of destigmatize any kind of shame and uncomfortableness around it.
And if someone tells you that they are autistic, don't respond with, oh my goodness, I wouldn't have guessed you are on the spectrum. That person is sharing their diagnosis with you because they want to be able to unmask. They don't want to have to keep appearing neurotypical, which is the way they probably were around you before they disclosed their autism.
There are challenges with being autistic. It is a disability. Even if we took away all those like social, even if we took away a lot of the modern overstimulation that is happening in, our daily lives nowadays with constant news and everything coming at us, autistic people still have sensory issues and executive functioning struggles. These things make it a disability. And disability, again, is a neutral word. It's not bad or good to be disabled. It's just a variation of the human experience. And as you noticed, I've been stimming a lot in this video. That means I'm like moving my hands around. I usually have a fidget around, but I didn't grab one for this video. So the last fact about autism is that autistic people are usually moving some body part or the other at any given time. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. And if you found it useful, please pass it on to a friend or family member. And I will see y'all in the next one. Bye.